I'm Stephen Foskett, organizer of Tech Field Day, publisher of Gestalt IT, and we're here at Cloud Field Day 15, and we're having a little time to have a delegate roundtable discussion. One of the points that was just brought up was the idea that we have a really North American-centric, Western-centric view of the cloud, and yet that view is pretty skewed. So as Eric just brought up here, if you ask most of us here in the West, what are the top clouds? What is the number one cloud? Probably a lot of people would say, it's Amazon Web Services, AWS probably, or maybe Azure, from Microsoft, maybe, Google, Facebook, Meta, they've got a cloud of their own, don't they? I'm pretty clever here. Oh, don't forget Oracle. But of course, globally, that's really not the picture. So Eric, do you want to talk a little bit about this?
Yeah, we even in North America, we talk about the top 5 clouds, and it's tricky because is IBM cloud number 4? Like, assuming that we got the podiums taken care of, we know sort of the key players, and because Alibaba doesn't sort of very publicly talk about the size of their cloud, but every metric that we're aware of, they are larger by workload, by scale than any of the other supposed top 3. But it's funny, who's 4, 5, and 6 really is the one that I'd love to hone in on, because we sort of makes a little poke here and there about Oracle Cloud, but it's significantly sized. They've got a very strong enterprise audience. So there's we sort of have a little poke at it here and there. And yeah, when we get into the global market, what are the South Asian centric clouds that we're not necessarily talking about? We do sort of focus on the market that we sell into, I guess. There's right reasons and wrong reasons to narrow our cloud focus, but I'm just curious to get people's opinion.
And we also have to include Tencent, by the way, which is another huge cloud. Yep. And I think that also, so there's certainly a sort of a Western-centric viewpoint here. There's also the reality of the politics of the IT industry, because of course, many of these clouds in China are not able to use the latest equipment from the West because of political blockades against them. And increasingly, that's going to be the case now that, we've had the administration in the US announce that they're not going to allow the H100 to be exported to China for use that way, though apparently they will allow it for the cloud. I don't know. We'll see. And we've got some European people here too. I mean, is there a cloud in Europe?
Yes, I mean, I should introduce the concept of data sovereignty in this case, because we used to call our company as Italian public cloud. Well, of course, the most of the market is still on AWS, on Azure, on GCP, Google, but many companies, also governing ones, have some compliance issue going there, even if they don't know still. So in that case, yes, that big companies had data centers in Italy, Azure, AWS, all of them, but there's still a compliance company since the Cloud Act is still active, even if the data center is in Italy. So, well, this also let us work in this place, in this market. So the Western-centric cloud, yes, it exists. It's clear it exists. But in Europe, we are maybe moving to European little companies.
Well, that's a problem in Europe. Because of all of these legislations, we only have national cloud companies, not European cloud companies. And so OVH is French, Hetzner is German. There's plenty of examples in each of the countries, but there's no single, overarching big player.
You're right.
And even though we have the Gaia X, the European cloud initiative.
Let it go, Gaia. Gaia is not a provider. But many people consider Gaia as a provider, cloud provider.
No, it's not a provider, but it is an attempt to group multiple cloud providers and create one super cloud.
They'll need a cloud architect across the chasm.
At that same definition, though, can you not look at it never-ending sea of VCCP power or vCloud Director powered VCCPs out there and say, okay, this is your super cloud. You address all of them exactly the same, but they're far different providers with different price points and everything. Yeah,
And I guess you could make a case that maybe OpenShift is the world's largest cloud provider. Now it's not unified,
Right.
but there's an awful lot of OpenShift cloud out there. Similarly, you could maybe even make the case that some of the HPC implementations are a cloud, sort of, and maybe some of those are more powerful. And then you do have to ask the question, well, what about the internal clouds? You know, what about Meta's internal cloud? Is that a large cloud? But the point is, I guess, that, you know, we have to not take a Western-centric, North American-centric, you know, America-centric viewpoint when we're looking at cloud service providers. And we have to agree that for many reasons, politics, data sovereignty, there are and will be huge cloud services outside of the United States umbrella. And does
Not
it
to
matter?
be the guy in the room, but I'm gonna just say it. Why do I care about how big the cloud is outside of the US when all of my business is done inside the US?
Well, and that's actually a valid
Is that
question,
true,
because
Mhm.
increasingly, because of data sovereignty, I think companies are actually going to be saying exactly the same thing, except substituting US for whatever jurisdiction they're in.
Exactly. So you asked a great question. Is that true though? It's true in terms of where the company is hosted, where the infrastructure is hosted, right? And so if I'm here in the US, right? So let's say I work in the public sector, and this is the same in the EU. The cloud has to be inside of the nation of which the data is. So data sovereignty is a huge factor,
Yes.
right? So that is one use case. A different use case is, okay, well, I have a function that I need to run and I'm going to start it up in Silicon Valley or East US. Again, I'm in the US, so I'm going to be looking into those areas, right? And we as you know, US folks are going to look at regions. And there's 5 regions for AWS, there's 6 regions for Azure, and there's 2 regions for Alibaba. So why would I immediately look at Alibaba when AWS and Azure already have more regions and are closer to where these individual businesses will be than Alibaba would be?
Well, with
What
that,
if you're a global organization
exactly.
that you do
yeah.
operate?
And this is assuming a B2B space, but if you go into the B2C space, it is not as clear cut as you make the example out to be, because your consumer may be in Europe or in Africa or in China or in, you know, wherever else.
Edge cloud.
And the data privacy laws in Europe isn't just about isn't about your employees, your users. It's also your customer. So customer data, if it's European customers, you know, that whole data sovereignty takes away. But for a global organization, yes, you may have headquarters in the US, but let's say you have offices in Milan, in London, Melbourne, like that has a huge play in too.
Do they have upside down clouds there? Sorry, just does that?
Stop it.
I couldn't resist that one.
Well, no, of course they don't have that, but the cloud goes the other way around.
I mean, your point is very valid. Both of your points are very validated, but I think if you look at the amount of businesses that have that type of global market, they're probably not the majority of businesses. They're the big folk, right? Whereas if we're looking at the majority of businesses that are startups, and most startups are probably going to start in the cloud. They're not going to drop, you know, 500 grand on a VxRail or some, you know, UCS cluster, right? They're going to look at some other way of doing it. And they're probably going to be like, hey, I just want to see if this application works. And where they're going to do it, they're going to spin it up in the cloud on some sort of serverless app engine type solution, right? And where they're going to do it, they're going to do it where it's local to them.
I guess it's sort of the idea of like the well-known brand market, in the same way that in the 80s it was like Coke versus Pepsi, but the largest provider of soft drinks was RC. RC Cola created every other cola for every other non-Coke, non-Pepsi person. They were the largest producer of cola in the world, but we only talked about Coke and Pepsi as this is the war. And I guess that's sort of my thing of like, we are carefully avoiding the size of opportunity. However, as a business, right, to a North American centric business, may not make sense to be dabbling in Alibaba Cloud.
Good point. And sometimes it seems that, when you're choosing a cloud provider, the validation, the process validation, especially for company that has a regulation on data and whatever is validating depending on the brand you are choosing, right? And yeah, the trust of this brand with a customer experience, which is really important.
I think, yeah, it's not going to be super cloud, it's royal cloud.
Correct.
Sweet mother of God.
we've already
Yeah.
super cloud was so last year.
Yes. So last roundtable discussion.
So this discussion is valid and it has its place because at the end of the day, you know, we are in a way very focused on AWS and Azure because they just start throwing stuff at us and they continually throw stuff at us. You know, OCI is doing some really interesting stuff, and I think a lot of people need to pay attention to what they're doing because AWS and Azure were so focused on being first to market that now Oracle's coming third or fourth or wherever they are, and they're just like picking up the pieces like, oh, this is really cool. Why did they do it that way? That doesn't make any sense. Oh, maybe we should do it this way. And I see Alibaba in kind of a different way as well because they have those opportunities as well. So it's worth paying attention to all cloud providers, not just the big three.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I guess maybe that's the answer to the question. I don't know, Eric, you posed the question. Is the answer to the question kind of, well, it depends, and what does it matter, you know, in terms of this?
Yeah, I think that's why I always just be careful of who you say is the top, because we have to give it context that can really frame when we say top three clouds, because that's often the thing. And even again, services within the cloud, where is Oracle shining incredibly is the idea of like autonomous databases, autonomous this. They're coming to the market later, but they're innovating in ways that nobody else is willing to, because they're capturing this enterprise client who's like, we demand this certain requirement that I'm building myself. So they're gonna take a little longer, build it a little different, and then they've got this captured base of people that are already willing to pay. And I see Calvin.
Yeah, is that like, the autonomous database? Is that just Oracle marketing coming at us? I mean, it's just Oracle running on their own virtual machine.
Autonomous licensing. That's different.
Right. Yeah. Because believe me, I've tried that out. I did do some proof of concept over there, and I was like, oh, this is just still a pain in the butt to deal with, as it ever was a pain in the butt to deal with. I don't feel like there was any innovation there, other than they put a fancy name on it, like they always do with some other things.
I mean, back to what I think you're right. There's definitely some stuff that shows up that, you know, that's been around for a while with Oracle, so they have to stick with their brand, right? But on another hand, I mean, like, what is the proprietary infrastructure as code solution that Oracle uses? Hands up. Anyone? It's Terraform.
Does it rhyme with Terraform?
Yeah, it's Terraform. And if you go to AWS, they have CloudFormation. If you go to Azure, they have ARM templates, right? But if you go to OCI, they're like, why do we need to do this? Someone already did it and they did it really a lot better. Let's just write our own provider and work with them directly to try to make sure it works really well with OCI. And they did that.
Well, and interesting on the Azure side, you know, and even though we've got some Azure experience amongst the table here across all of us, right? Why did they support their first, you know, layer support for Terraform within the console? Like you can write Terraform code natively in the Cloud Shell. It was the first one they brought too, because they've, like you mentioned, they sort of learned like, all right, we get it. Our templates aren't working out so well
because it's JSON. Let's battle. Talk about that.
And so that's another aspect I think that's interesting, is that one of the reasons that Amazon gets so much credit for being the number one cloud is because they're the number one cloud in terms of launching new products, features, innovations, you know, getting attention of developers, getting attention of the market, and so on. I mean, they're basically generating all the buzz. And for right, you know, for good or bad, I don't know if anybody wants to disagree with me on that.
I think it's rightfully so. You look at things with the Firecracker and the security and their isolation, and they really are diving deep on building specialized hardware, special CPU SKUs. They are all in on innovating and actually providing value in the cloud and actually making the cloud a better place. And I think everyone else is just continually playing catch up to them. There's some cases, yes, where they'll be like, maybe a lower tier provider is going to look at them and be like, why'd they do it that way? And they're going to do it maybe a more simpler way, but they're just doing kind of first principles, like maybe we should just refactor this more simply. They're not doing the same I don't believe they're doing nearly the same level of innovation that Amazon's putting into some of these things. I mean, Amazon's even open sourcing back some of these pieces, which I think is really interesting, because then they're engaging the whole community on their cloud at their platform. And so people get excited about that.
When we've even learned that they've created terms that also standardized, right? When we say serverless, we mean Lambda. When we say, like, what did Azure call their regions before? What do they call their availability zones? They called them data centers. Until everybody kept saying, I want to deploy into your availability zone. They go, we call them data centers. Well, what do they call them now? Availability zones, because they got sick and tired of being corrected because Amazon sort of led that charge. It's interesting. I mean, so that's, there you go. There's the third panel. Is HashiCorp actually the real supercloud? Oh.
Well, yeah, and I would say that I don't want to discount the innovation coming from the other clouds. In fact, I think that there, as you're pointing out, there's actually a lot of innovation coming in, as you know, Nathan was saying as well. It's just that Amazon gets, you know, is kind of the first mover with a lot of these things, and then a lot of these other things. But yet, that being said, Microsoft showed us that it was possible to build a cloud for the enterprise and for enterprise developers primarily. Google is now obviously heading aggressively toward enterprise customers, where Amazon is still focused more on the regular lowercase d developers. And I think that that's good for all of us to have this kind of innovation and creativity. So. I guess in summary then, should we be worried about the, AWS centricism of this conversation, or should we say that's sort of inevitable given what they're doing, and yet we know that there's more going on outside of AWS?
I'll jump in and say it's inevitable, because if I have to try to memorize another sizing of a stupid AMI image, so help me. I mean, like, it's that granular, right? They're like, hey, we got a new thing coming out, and it's like every week we got new things, we got changes that we changed here, we've added new function. You have 1,500 services. It's unrelenting how much stuff that they're putting out. But that being said, if you've got some white space to take a look at what's going on in the other clouds, take a little peek over there.
But look at the consistency across some of these clouds and their offerings. If you want a GPU in GCP, good luck. You've kind of got Iowa and a smattering of some other pieces here and there. Where you've got AWS, I feel like they try to launch consistently the same hardware, the same offerings, all their same tools globally whenever possible. There's going to be some small exceptions, as opposed to, I feel like the other cloud providers, it's the other way around. You got to pick specific regions if you want specific products or specific SKUs or specific capabilities.
I wouldn't entirely say that. I think the initial launch.
I mean, no, I looked up right now. If I want an A100 GPU on GCP, I got to go to US Central, and that's pretty much it.
I think when they launch it, it's geared towards a specific region from a, probably other factors within that data center. And as they build up, they do launch in other regions. I mean, Azure does the same thing. They'll launch something in a particular region, and then as it, builds consumption, they move it to, they add it to another region and so forth.
So to get back to the initial question, though, is that true internationally or just in terms of the US regions? Is there one cloud that does it better in terms of global, serving global customers?
I think they're all the same.
I disagree.
They're all the same.
Well, what do you think?
Oh, I mean, I think the fact that it depends on how fast they're going to deploy this out to the other regions. If I've got a business need and I need to have that at the edges where I'm doing inference or model building and speed matters, I'm going to go with the cloud that gives me the things I need at those points. And like, if I can't depend on the cloud I'm currently in to be able to release new features quickly enough into those other regions, it's a non-starter.
So which cloud does it? So, I mean, European folks, which of the North American clouds do you think serves your region better?
Again, it depends on how fast it is, but I have to say that maybe AWS has tons of features, but it could be also something bad for normal users. So if you are a developer or you need some innovative tool to develop in the cloud, you will go AWS. You need just virtual data center, maybe you would choose Azure. I don't speak about Google.
No, I think that's right. I think if your needs are straightforward and you just need VMs, and you're not doing kind of more cutting edge cloud native delivery of applications, any of these clouds are going to be fine because they're all going to deliver compute
Or
in its simplest form.
yeah, or any of the non-cloud native clouds, i.e.
Okay,
Colo,
Yeah.
you know,
Exactly. Don't
simple
forget
VPN.
Linode, DigitalOcean.
There
Oh,
is
no, that's
so
true.
much
Actually, really true. DigitalOcean is an awesome option when you don't have special needs.
at
Yeah.
a fraction of the price.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can say as a customer of one of the big cloud provider of the world, when it was time to choose which public cloud to choose for our application to move, migrate our data center completely on premise from
Premises.
on premises. Sorry, on premises to a public cloud. One of these, because we had a lot of contracts, a lot of regulation. Was which region are available first, and time it was one of the key elements for choosing. And probably in Italy, I speak in Italy because we have a lot of contract that for regulation we must keep the data in Italy. In Italy, the first public big cloud provider that was providing something new was Amazon, right? Then Google come later, and so. But as a customer, I want to say, not all the region had the same services. Not all the region have the same computing. Not all the so for this reason, it's a continuous research, a continuous, application and collaboration with the public cloud. And this is the reason why we choose AWS, because as we said before, we have someone who can speak, who can contract. So I can say that you can use and consume public cloud provider as, go to the market. I want 10 EC2 instance for VPC and so, or you can establish some, agreement with them. And probably this is one of the difference why, as a customer, we are choosing a cloud provider from another, because we have someone we can hide or help us to build something, and then is going to listening what we have to do and what are our needs. And so this is one of the key elements because we are choosing, for example, AWS instead of the other provider. But the things is not ending, because in Italy and in Europe, the other cloud providers are still building many services, improving the data center, and so.
It's actually, that's a really good point to think of. Like, if you just want to spin something up really fast in a region, where do you go? Versus if I want to establish my enterprise computing platform on a public cloud, who will I choose? They're actually two different questions. That's a very interesting point.
No, that's actually a really good angle on this. If you want to establish your enterprise computing platform on a public cloud someplace, you're going to want to go to a place where you're going to be assured you can get the resources you need. Right now, if you go to Azure and try and launch a free instance in their US East, good luck. You might not get one.
Yeah.
If you're going to launch a Databricks cluster, sometimes you may not get the resources unless you have pre-reserved those pieces. And that's I hate to say that, it doesn't sound like an elastic cloud to me when I can't get them ad hoc.
That's true. Well, I guess
I don't mean to be the AWS fanboy in the room, but I'm just saying they have just built such a capability to continually deliver, even at the smallest level, ad hoc free instances, free tier. You don't hear anybody complaining about not being able to spin up free tier instances.
I guess have we answered the question though about the international cloud and the North American centricism? Because it sounds like we've come out to say, hey, AWS, that's the international cloud. That's the default de facto cloud. They may not be the biggest, but they're the default. And I guess maybe that's the answer for now.
Right.
And I don't want to say that the answer is going to be complete, because with the rise of the super cloud and so on, we might end up with a different picture. But for now, I guess that's the answer. Even though maybe Alibaba is bigger, even though heck, maybe Azure might be bigger for all we know, AWS is still the #1 cloud in terms of mind share.